Welcome to another episode of Beyond Death, a podcast that is rewriting the conversation about death, covering a range of topics in the death space and celebrating the wonderful people that work in this area and hearing from those affected. We are your hosts. I'm Mark, a radiographer and lecturer in forensic radiography, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Lindsay, a vintage forensic radiographer.
And Lindsay. Who do we have with us today?
Well, we have Amy-Lee Brookes today. Hi, Amy. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Good, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to start off with reading your bio, which was of great interest to everybody. So Amy qualified as a radiographer in 2013 and has worked as the post-mortem CT lead at Lancashire Teaching Hospital since 2018. She joined the International Association of Forensic Radiographers in 2014 and currently holds the position of Education Officer on the International IAFR Committee and UK DVI Coordinator on the IAFR UK branch. Amy graduated with a Master of Science in Forensic Radiography at Teesside University in 2017, having undertaken research into the use of imaging in juvenile skeletons in forensic anthropology. She has an extensive post-mortem and forensic experience in adult post-mortem cases in plain film, CT, and post-mortem angiography, and in live SPA cases and post-mortem paediatric cases, including SPA, SUDI, and forensics. Additionally, she has deployment experience in DVI using both CT and dental imaging. Additionally, she has experience working in both adult and juvenile skeletal human remains. Her experience also includes the imaging of skeletal remains, both archaeological and forensic. So that is quite a bio, Amy, isn't it? You've been a busy girl. What a great career.
Yeah.
So when you have time to do other things like podcasts, I'm going to start off with the first question that we have for you. Amy, how did you get involved with working in the dead?
Well, it started back during my undergraduate course, actually. I had a lecture, 2-hour lecture on forensic imaging, covered the broad scope of everything, but had quite a lot of information on DVI. And I sort of thought, wow, that is definitely something I want to get involved with. I didn't realize it was actually something that radiographers could be so heavily involved with. At the time, though, unfortunately, it was sort of ad hoc work. There wasn't like the work there is now, sort of in post-mortem CT. So the first thing I did when I qualified was I applied for the Teesside master's degree, got onto that. And at the time, I was working in West Yorkshire, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity for any sort of forensic imaging, whether it be in living SPA cases or any post-mortem work at all. So I moved myself down to London, got a job at Great Ormond Street Hospital, where they had an array of forensic cases for me to get hands in on. I also joined the IFR in 2014, so that helped significantly with learning more about forensic imaging and forensic cases overall. And then I joined the committee in 2015. From there, that just opened up a lot of opportunities. I did a lot of things like I worked with skeletal remains, both at museums and at universities. Also, as you mentioned, I did DVI deployment, and I did a internship in Switzerland for a month, doing post-mortem CT there. So I managed to cram a lot of things in while I lived in London. I was only there for 2 years. And then during that time, the opportunity came up for the lead post-mortem radiographer at Royal Preston Hospital. And I went for an interview thinking, oh, probably, well, it'll be a good experience to at least go for the interview. And I got the job. So that's how I ended up with the role of working full-time with the deceased.
Wow, that is so interesting. What a journey that was, especially Switzerland, I would think. Mark, I'm going to hand you
Amazing.
over for the next question, if you
Yes,
don't mind.
thank you. And you raised a couple of interesting things there. So it sounds as though you were interested in this as an undergraduate student, which and I speak to quite a few undergraduate students who are interested in this. And as you rightly said, when you started, there was really no career pathway in forensic imaging, but we now have one, which is brilliant. So I wondered what challenges you foresee in training the next generation of radiographers now that we have this new pathway.
Oh, it's a very interesting question. So sort of beyond the difficulties that we get with forensic imaging completely. So things like sort of providing that emotional support, ensuring that radiographers have the resilience to do this sort of work. One of the key things that I think will be a challenge within training the next generation will be ensuring sort of proper mentorship and having regulations across the country. So currently, I would say we definitely have a shortage of specialised trainers. There are only a few people within the country that I would say are experts within forensic imaging, particularly in PMCT. It's a very niche field. So we are currently sat at having a shortage of people who can give that, that in-depth training. We also have sort of the access to the training resources. Again, obviously IFR, fantastic for getting out training, but currently there is not any sort of overall national guidelines, particularly for the radiographers, for getting that training and what should be the standard, the minimum standard, etc., and getting that out. And then within that, which also is sort of linked to that having not as many experts currently, is our sort of resource limitations. So we require having, our specialised equipment, our facilities, and we're not having that widely available across the UK currently. Additionally, even when we are available to provide training to people, we're not able to do that with the deceased themselves. So it is sort of limited in that. We can't give that hands-on training that also is relevant to that real life scenario.
Interesting. You raised a couple of points there, and I just wonder whether you think that within undergraduate training, and particularly within the training centres, there's a sort of still a belief that this is very much a sort of sideline. It's not really a mainstream thing, and it's not really going anywhere. So therefore, why should we spend time with it with the students? Or do you feel that actually people within education are now seeing this as something that really is going to take off? What's your view on that?
Yes, I do think so. I think, as you said, some people still believe that, oh, it's ad hoc work, we're barely doing it. But I think the realization is coming in. I get a lot of correspondence from universities now to do lecturing, to also have their students come through the post-mortem CT department to understand what it is and see that it is actually a speciality that they will eventually be able to go into. There is a rising demand for forensic radiography as a whole, and particularly post-mortem CT. It is coming up, I'd say within 10 years, we'll be seeing it across coroners' jurisdictions having access to post-mortem CT for their work. So hopefully everyone will get on board with seeing that it is something quite important to teach to our undergraduates.
So do you think that post-mortem imaging should be part of all radiographer training then?
Yes, I do believe so, because even though, like we
Mm.
said, currently it's mostly ad hoc work, even though that still needs to have the radiographers need to have the understanding of what post-mortem imaging is, what forensic image is, understanding its ethical, legal, and professional implications to the work they're actually doing. So it's that raising awareness. And as I said, we do have that rising demand for forensic radiography. So in years to come, people already having that understanding will be very important to move it forward in being a specialised role. However, I would say that because it is a specialised role, it's quite important that the training that we give, that it's that people have that foundation understanding, but we are saying that to be within the role itself, you do need to have more training, particularly in sort of anatomy and pathology that we're seeing in post-mortem work, and the legal implications when we are doing forensics. And also, we need to obviously consider the ethical and psychological impacts. Not every radiographer is going to be interested in post-mortem work, just like same with pediatrics. You have radiographers who won't touch that with a barge pole. And not all radiographers are going to be equipped or willing to engage in this type of work. So I think having it as part of basic training, it should be an optional thing that people do. but it should be there for them to say, actually, I am interested in that. Can we start that as part of my role?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and it is difficult. And you've highlighted, I think, what the main issue is there, which is, for years we've always said in radiography, well, this should be an additional thing that you decide to do. No one should be forced to do it. But if you're going to introduce a sort of basic level of training, you almost have to go beyond that and say, well, this is what it is. This is something that you may, when you're qualified, get into, and therefore we're going to give you the basics. And that will involve them in some sort of discussion about, as students, about dealing with the dead, which I think is realistic. Yeah, Lindsay, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think in the context of there's an increase of demand for this work, and there's a shortage of people trained to do it. And as you say, in the next 10 years, we're going to see this exponentially grow. I just wondered, how long do you think it takes to train a radiographer to be competent in PMCT? And I know that's probably a very open question because some people are much quicker than others, but I just wondered, in your experience, how long does it take averagely, in your experience, to train somebody up?
Wow, that is a very, that's a very a question with a very broad answer, I would say. So sort of being competent as a post-mortem radiographer, particularly in PMCT, it's the combination of having sort of that, formal education, your specialized training, but also that hands-on experience. So it can, as you've said, the timeline can vary depending on both an individual's background, how quick they are at learning, and the complexity of skills required for that post-mortem CT department. So I would say about maybe a month or two to get those skills, because the scanning itself it's not that difficult. It's actually probably the easiest scanning a CT radiographer is going to do, technically, because we don't have a lot of protocols and there's not a lot of amendments, and obviously we don't have any radiation issues because our patients are deceased, so we're able to repeat things, which is very useful. But then you have to add on the fact that you might be learning how to ventilate the deceased, you might be learning how to do angiography, whether that will be hand injections or with a pump. You also need to be looking at the fact that you're looking at pathology and anatomy differently in the deceased than you are in your clinical patients. Adding on to that as well is the fact that you're working with deceased patients. It's very different to working with the living. You have to learn how to perform your imaging in context to them, where you're handling the deceased, and sensitivity issues as well. And then adding on to that with your post-mortem work, a lot of what we do is coronial work. It's not forensic. And the forensic context will need a lot more training, especially in your medical legal consideration. So I'd say overall, with time, it's a couple of months to sort of get on the basic skills, and then you're talking a year, at least a couple of years, to get that sort of specialised training. But I wouldn't say it's about the amount of time, but it's gaining the skills, the confidence to be able to do this work, to work effectively, particularly the fact that it's such a specialised field.
Yeah, and the competencies, isn't it? So some people are quick, some people slow, but it's like you have to literally consolidate your experience. You can't just learn it overnight. So it's a case of exposure to different cases, the difference between coronial and forensic, which is huge, as you pointed out, and also the psychological side of things, being well aware and trained and in the psychological aspects of the work. So following on from that question, what qualifications do you think a radiographer should consider when they work in this area? What kind of pathways can they go on, and what would you recommend?
I would say it's very dependent on what you want to do. If you want to sort of go into the role that I'm in, where you're leading a service, you're doing sort of research and things like that, you're getting very hands-on, you're sort of going into your advanced practice side of forensic imaging, I would definitely recommend doing a master's degree and learning more, in a relevant forensic field, so you're understanding the importance of the forensic side of things, forensic imaging and post-mortem imaging overall. And like you said, the difference between a forensic case and coronial, the different legal implications as well. Quite importantly in this, I think that basis should be that you would have maybe a PG cert, but it's not always something that people can do. There's money, there's time restraints, especially if we work in the NHS. We're not all going to get grants to be able to go off and do a postgraduate course. So I would say you, as a CT radiographer, you can come into this with your CT knowledge and learn the basics without having to have qualifications. And then you can also, if you have, like I said, that time spent training with the skills and the confidence, you can get into that without having the qualifications. But I think to have a master's degree is very important to be able to go and sort of that above and beyond role and having that lead role as well.
Yeah, it's about really getting to that master's level of understanding and understanding research, understanding the importance of your role. Which centres in the UK provide that MSc for radiographers that you could recommend? I think Teesside is one of them. Are there any others?
Yes, I think there's currently just Teesside. There was one at Leicester University that was focused on post-mortem imaging, particularly in CT. I'm not sure if that's running still, but yes, currently the Teesside one is a master's or a PG cert, PG dip in forensic radiography, and it covers not just PMCT, it covers the entire breadth of forensic radiography, and that's the one that I did, so I feel a bit biased saying that it's fantastic, but it really was. Gave me, all that information and the confidence to be able to, definitely know what I'm talking about.
Indeed. And I think you also pointed out the amount of transferable skills that radiographers have in their ordinary lives, their work lives, that we sometimes don't recognise. But we have huge amounts of experience that we can tap onto. Talking of enormous experience, Mark, I'm going to hand over to you for the next question.
Ah, thank you so much. So, Amy, I wanted to sort of move on a little bit from we've talked a lot about education and training, but before we do, there's something just sort of occurred to me that you and a lot of the other people who are in this new field of postmortem CT are working with a whole range of people that have never had anything to do with radiology at all.
Mhm.
You're working with coroners, you're working with anatomical pathology technologists and pathologists, and if they have seen some sort of X-ray machine, it's probably old and dusty, and that's it. They've never seen a CT scanner. So, do you think that there's an education job there that the profession has to do in terms of educating these people, and how do you go about that?
Yes, and I think actually, Mark, it works both ways. So firstly, I'll just say, as a radiographer coming into this, it sort of links back to that education. You are working with these professionals that we normally have nothing to do with. You mentioned them there, the coroner, pathologists, even forensic anthropologists, the APTs, and we're learning all this new terminology. We're learning how they work, and conversely, we have to teach them about how we work. How the scanner works, radiation protection. This is all brand new to them. So we sort of, at our service, we educated the APTs, for example, on the radiation protection side of things, what everything is, what it does. And they also, in turn, educated us. They taught us about external examinations. They let us come in on post-mortems, especially if we've seen something on a scan and that patient has then gone on to have a post-mortem. And with it being this brand new sort of hybrid way of working with a new multidisciplinary team, I think that it's something that when we have our education, it's very important to cover. And also the fact that it's an ongoing learning experience with it being so new, having these professional relationships.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah. So moving on a little bit, I know that from your CV that Lindsay went through, you're involved in various committees and various initiatives. I just wonder what the latest sort of exciting projects are that you're involved with.
We have a couple going on that are worth mentioning. With the UK branch of the IFR, myself and a couple of colleagues are working on revamping the DVI team. It has been on a hiatus due to issues with access to membership and things like that. But we're now in the process of sorting that out, revamping the whole process of how you apply and when you have applied, how it all works, how deployment will work. So that's quite exciting and exciting for the people who do want to be part of that team. But I think the most exciting project that I would say that I'm working on at the moment is I'm sat on the committee for the joint IFR and Saucer conference, which I'm so excited for. It's in September next year. Um, and that is going to be a fantastic conference. We already have amazing lectures lined up, keynote speakers, and I'm just so excited to not only go to Cape Town, but also just to go to this conference and also be a part of the planning committee. It's the first time I've done something like this. It's very interesting. I'm learning a lot. And again, working with people that I've never would have worked with before. So yeah, it's very exciting.
Brilliant. And just before I hand you back to Lindsay, I've got one more question for you. You've done loads and loads of things over a very short space of time, really. But which one of those are you most proud of?
I think it would be coming in to my role in post-mortem CT. It was quite scary to come in, because they'd already set up a lot of the service. So I sort of came in and decided, we might need to change this, we might need to change that. And once it actually got off the ground and was, everything was working as it should, and we got a lot of good feedback, particularly from families, of how well the service is and how happy they are that this service is available to them and how quick the turnaround time is. It was a really nice feeling to know that the work that you've done is actually helping people.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. That's great. Lindsay, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Amy, in the context that you're raising the profile of this niche profession, part of our profession, and you described, meeting people you would never normally be involved with, but now you're part of a big multidisciplinary team and they need you and you need them as much equally. What do you think is the biggest misconception people have about you or your work or both? What do people not get?
Oh, okay. That's it. Yeah, that's very interesting. So I would say one of the big things is that, as we've sort of discussed in depth previously, is the fact that it's just regular radiography, but with deceased patients. There's not much more to it than that. Which obviously, as we've discussed, there is a lot more. Even though we're using similar radiography techniques, everything else about postmortem imaging is a lot different. So that is definitely one of the things that we get. People don't realize, like we said, the professionals that we're working with, the amount of knowledge you need to have, understanding the death processes and how that's going to look different on imaging, how that even affects your positioning of patients and things like that. Um, Other things would be that most of the work we do is either high profile or super exciting forensic cases. Unfortunately, that isn't the truth. Most of our cases, I would probably say about 99%, are routine work that we would say, coronial work. We're looking at natural deaths, accidents, situations where the causes of death are unclear, but they aren't forensic cases, so the police aren't involved. They're not criminal investigations. Only about 1% of our work are those exciting, high-profile cases. Another misconception I would say is that we work alone. Particularly, people always think we work in a really old, spooky building, that mortuaries are really scary. They're not. And as we said, we are part of this multidisciplinary team, this new sort of hybrid way of working between pathology and radiology. And we work very, very closely with the APTs. It's very integral to our role that we have that working relationship and that we understand each other, and that we're always collaborating to get our patients done.
Great, because that really describes where we are in our workplace and the growing profession that it is. So, Amy, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today, because we're going to wrap up now. And thank you for that plug for Saucer. I'm also very much looking forward to that as well. And I know Mark is. And thank you for doing all the planning and setting it up for us for September next year. So wrapping up another episode of Beyond Death, Mark, what have we learnt today? What can you recap from Amy's
I, I,
talk today?
I think we've learnt a lot, but I think that the most significant thing is that, Amy, along with one or two others, has been a trailblazer in what is a new area for our profession, a new specialty. And she's raised some very good points about the challenges that presents to us as a profession in terms of preparing people, not just undergraduate, but postgraduate level, to take on that challenge and work in this new field. And I think you've been fantastic inspiration to everyone, Amy. So yeah, well done.
A real trailblazer. So just to wrap up then, if you enjoy our episodes, please follow us and rate our channel. And we're always keen to improve on feedback that we get from our listeners. And so once again, if I haven't said it enough, thank you so much, Amy. I hope you have a really great day.
Thank
But
you.
whilst that concludes today's conversation, remember, it's not the end because there is always more beyond death.